Hello there, I'm Black Bite News, and when I did the video on the dual nationals and how they had to enter the UK with a British passport, I didn't quite understand the technicalities, or should I say, I didn't understand how it would affect EU people. And a lot of people were saying, oh, I always come in on my British passport. What's the big deal? But for the EU nationals who have settled status, this is a big deal. And so I wanted to read you my bedtime story so that it makes sense to you. And I've called it UK Travel Shake-Up Hit EU Dual Nationals Really Hard. From Wednesday, February the 25th, which is today, a major change comes into effect for anyone planning to travel to the United Kingdom. Visitors from many countries who had previously only needed a passport to board their flights now must secure an electronic travel authorization, otherwise known as ETA, before travelling. This is a straightforward process for most international visitors, but for dual British nationals, it has created an immediate and complicated challenge. Under the new rules, dual nationals are no longer eligible for ETAs. They must now travel with a valid British passport or a certificate of entitlement that carries a price tag of £589. This has left many long-term expatriates frustrated, confused, and in some cases temporarily grounded. Take, for example, the Belgian citizen who needed to visit her father in the UK. She's lived and worked in the UK for over 3 decades. She has always travelled to and fro on her Belgian passport. When she went back to see friends, because she never needed a British passport. That is because, given she's been here 32 years, she clearly arrived before Brexit, which gave her the right of abode in the UK as a permanent resident, so she could work, rent property, and access healthcare. Her legal status is settled status under the EU settlement scheme, or more likely it is, which allows her to live freely in the UK, which is what she did. That right was automatic for EU citizens at the time, no visa required. The catch is that settled status or residency rights do not replace a British passport. She is not automatically a British citizen just because she's lived here for 30 years. She would have to apply for naturalisation to obtain a British passport. That's why she's been using her Belgian passport to travel. It was valid and sufficient for entry. The new system leaves her with a difficult choice. Her British passport, if she had one, may have expired, and applying for a new one requires submitting her Belgian passport as part of the identity verification process. That means for several weeks she could be unable to travel on either passport. She wouldn't be able to travel on either passport. For someone who needs to visit an elderly parent, in this case her 96-year-old father, this is not a theoretical problem. It is very real and is urgent human concern. Passport processing delays or losses at a government office can be extremely stressful, especially when your ability to travel, even for urgent family reasons, depends on it. It's one of the reasons why dual nationals who have never needed a British passport before are frustrated by these new ETA rules. This situation illustrates the larger issue at play for dual nationals from the EU, especially. For decades, many of them have relied on their non-British passport to travel freely without incident. The ETA system was simple, fast, and largely automatic for citizens of many countries. Now they face a choice that wasn't part of their plan. They either have to invest in a costly certificate of entitlement, like I said, it's £598 or £589, or apply for a British passport and accept the weeks-long waiting period, which they cannot travel. Standard British passport applications can take 6 to 10 weeks when processed from abroad. Certificates of entitlement generally arrive in 3 to 8 weeks. The frustration is compounded by the mechanics of the process. Airlines are legally required to check travel documentation before boarding. Even if a traveller could theoretically enter the UK at the border, the airline may refuse boarding because they can be fined for carrying someone without the correct documentation. Some carriers may accept expired British passports or other alternative documents at their discretion, but these are inconsistent and unreliable. Meanwhile, emergency travel documents exist, but only under strict conditions and at airlines' discretion. The certificate of entitlement, while official, is expensive and cannot be rushed for urgent travel. So stories like this one highlight the practical impact of what might otherwise seem like a technical change in policy. Dual nationals who have lived abroad for decades suddenly find themselves navigating a maze of bureaucracy for something that used to be simple. A person who has worked in the UK for 32 years may now be in a situation where a brief visit to a family member could be delayed or blocked entirely by rules that demand valid British documentation before departure. The cost, the time, and the uncertainty combined to make the system feel punitive rather than supportive. This is not just about paperwork, it's about families, about the ability to respond to emergencies, about the kind of mobility that was once taken for granted. It is about the intersection of policy, identity, and human needs. While the government and airlines are providing formal guidance and exceptions for genuine emergencies, the process is complex and often slow, leaving dual nationals weighing risk and cost against family obligations and urgent travel. As these new rules take hold, stories like this one will likely become more common. People who have long relied on convenience and experience now have to plan meticulously, pay substantial fees, or risk being unable to travel. It is a system that works in theory, but it is challenging in practice. And it underscores how small policy changes can have significant human consequences. Families, elderly parents, long-term residents, and those with urgent travel needs are at the centre of this story. And for them, what may appear as a simple administrative update is in fact a sudden and tangible barrier. The practical reality for dual nationals is that they must either secure a valid British passport well in advance, budget for the certificate of entitlement, or rely on limited emergency measures. Each path carries trade-off in time, cost, and certainty. Meanwhile, airlines and immigration authorities enforce these rules strictly, leaving very little room for last-minute solutions. For many, this change has transformed a routine trip into a carefully calculated operation, where travel is no longer just about going to Poland or Romania or Belgium, but about ensured compliance with rules that can unexpectedly restrict movement. In the coming months, the true impact of this rule will become more visible as stories of frustration, delay, and human resilience surface. What is clear is that while the ETA system and certificate of entitlement are meant to standardise entry requirements, they also impose an unanticipated burden on dual nationals who have long balanced multiple passports and identities with their professional and personal lives. This story is a reminder that policy affects people first, and while governments focus on security and consistency, the lived experience of those navigating the system is often far more complicated.